Hello everybody, today we will be adding authentication to our app using Swift packages and Firebase Authentication. We will have the ability to sign up a user, again using Firebase Authentication, and then sign them in. We will do this two ways. One will be just using Swift packages where we are exposing the code, so we will have all of that public in our repository. And we'll have another flavor of the package where we'll be hiding part of the implementation in an XCFramework and then creating a bridge so that we can import all of the dependencies using Swift packages and at the same time maintaining part of the implementation hidden in an XCFramework, just exposing the public interface in a bridge. Okay, we will begin our video with some code that has already been inserted. Pretty much we added an email and password text field and two buttons, one to sign in, one to sign up. So far, we're not doing anything. That's what we're going to do in our package. We're going to include Firebase Authentication. We already have set up a project. We have the Google Info Services plist already imported. And here's where we will confirm that we're creating users and that we can actually sign in with them in our app. So we're going to start with the easy one, which is just a Swift package with source code. This is one tone package. Here we're going to add a new dependency. For now we're just using Lottie. So we go to our Swift package and let's add the authentication, which is this one. We need to add Firebase. This is the latest one. Save. And yeah, it should start fetching the dependencies. And okay, now all of the dependencies were imported and we're going to use FirebaseAuth. So let's add that dependency. And now that we specified that our tone package is going to use the FirebaseAuth, we can use it in one of our files. Let's create a new Swift file outside of resources. And let's call it authentication. And here's where we're going to import FirebaseAuth. And let's start creating methods. So first thing, when using Firebase, we need to configure it, so it will use the Google Info plist that we have in the host tab. Now, after we have configured our authentication, now we need two methods so we can authenticate. Let's see what else it needs. And here we'll begin with auth. We'll create one of these and we will sign it. But we need the one that has a completion so we know if it was successful or not. This one, yeah. We will use one with a poll. We won't pass the auth.result result since that will mean that the ones using us will also have to import FirebaseAuth. We want to make that easier for the ones using us. Okay, so what do we have in this result? Check it. If it's an optional, we have additional using for credential users. So if the result has a value, it's because the user exists. So if result is different than nil, that's when we will know that it was successful. So we return completion with true. else we will call our with false. And that'll be pretty much it. Now we have to create a similar method for signing up the user. Let's try building our package. Package succeeded, all good. Okay, that's it for our package. Let's add it locally to our project and use it. So pretty much what we require for the users of our package is that they themselves have to create their own Firebase project. They have to instantiate the authentication instance, and then they can import the package. So we'll import it locally. And it's our tone package, the one that we just modified. Here we can see it already has the authentication. Notice that it already got the nested dependencies that it has inside. So it has FirebaseAuth, and FirebaseAuth in turn also imports Firebase and other stuff. Okay, now we have everything available. Let's go to our content view. And let's go to our app. Remember that we need to configure, for those of you familiar with Firebase, you need to call the configure method in the app delegate as soon as it's initialized. Because we have a Swift UI app, we cannot do that. But instead, we do not want to add an app delegate. We could, there's methods, but instead we can, in the initializer of the Swift UI app, we can call that. Let's import our package. And here we can call the class that we created .configure. Now in our content view, that's where we can sign up the user. Import it. Yep. Authentication. Here we are signing up. We have email and password. These are two methods that are two variables, sorry, two published variables that the view model has that are tied to the text fields in our view. Here's the email and here the password. It was successful. By the way, here we have the state. This is how we're going to communicate if it was successful or no. We're just going to pass success and error, and according to that state, we will just be adding a message colored in green or in red if it was an error. There. Now we add this to yes. And let's do something similar for sign in. I think we're good to go. Let's give it a go. Here we have our project. Let's try first signing in with a user. And let's add just password. We are not using secure things, so let's try signing in. And it says there was an error logging in the user. Now let's try first creating the user. Oh, we have an error here. Again. Okay, once again. Let's try signing in. It should still get an error. Let's try signing up. Successfully created the user. Let's go to our project and verify. Let's refresh this page. And there in authentication, we have the user with the email. Let's go back to the app and try signing in and successfully signed in with the user. If we were to add another parameter to the email, we'll get the error because we're trying to sign in with a user that wasn't created. Now, again, if you're not using an XCFramework to hide your source code in your Swift package and you can just display your code out there on GitHub, then you have no issue stopping the video here. However, if you're using an XCFramework to hide the implementation of your project, then there's something we can do here to also hide this Firebase implementation part of it, but not fully. Now what that is. So let's remove our local package from here. Also remove it from the project. Sometimes stays there, it's a bit sticky. And let's go to our binary project, the one that has all of this, and see what happens. So it's this build.com package. This one has, again, we're adding the sources to a framework, and then we are creating an XCFramework from it. This is our framework, the build.com package. So how do we manage to get away with Lottie? We were adding a third-party dependency there. However, Lottie doesn't have nested dependencies. It's just Lottie. If you go to the Lottie package declaration, it doesn't have any dependencies. However, if we go to Firebase's repository, you'll see that in the FirebaseAuth we have a lot of dependencies. We have the check integral, Firebase core, and other dependencies in other packages that we're referencing. This doesn't make it possible to do what we did with Lottie, which is just provide an XCFramework to work in the project and then provide that. It doesn't work and it will actually not compile. If you go to the Firebase iOS SDK, unlike Lottie, when you go to the releases, you'll notice that here we have a Firebase zip, the source code and everything, but there's not any XCFramework inside of it. Instead, what do we have? So this is the folder that we downloaded, FirebaseAuth, and it has each and every single framework. However, this does not support Swift package. If I were to link all of these frameworks to my project, and then just ask for my client, the one using my framework, my package, to just download my package, it wouldn't work. They would also have to link each and every one of these frameworks. And at that point, well, it makes no sense. You're really not providing a package. They could just include Firebase themselves. So instead, what option could we do? Well, to begin with, we cannot add those dependencies. Instead, our project can work by declaring a bridge. So let's see how that will look like. We'll create a new group for this, will be authentication. And this is the package that we will have. So since we cannot add Firebase directly from this project, we can, however, specify that we want something that does something like Firebase. So let's first create a protocol. And we'll call it adapter. We're going to use the adapter design pattern. And this will have what our Tom package is using. We are expecting that we can still call these methods. Now, our own implementation will expect this from the host app. So let's create a instance. And here, what are we going to have? Oh, no, this is a verb. So here, what are we going to have? We're going to have a configure method, but it's not going to call the Firebase method yet. Again, this is inside the project. We cannot call Firebase. But what are we going to have here? We need to expect something. The host needs to give us something that we can use to configure. And that will be the adapter that we just created. So it'll be an authentication adapter. That adapter, in that one, we can call configure. We know it's going to be calling Firebase, but again, the one calling us doesn't, and we still do not make reference. And let's also keep a reference to this. And now we have a reference. Now our instance can do the other stuff as well. So we're gonna have more methods to sign in. So instead of calling this, we're gonna call our adapter. Oh, and we're gonna static. We use sign in and sign up. And that's it. From this point onward, we can build our XCFramework. For those of you that are not familiar with this, in our build tone package, there's a script here that will generate the framework. What we're doing is just building two archives, one for simulator and one for iOS devices, since again our package is for iOS only. And after archiving these two, we create an XCFramework. All of this is in Apple's documentation. So I'm gonna remove this, gonna remove these archives, and we're gonna run the command again to generate this. So now we're in terminal, we are on this location, and we can source XCFramework script, and this will create the XCFramework. Okay, now we have again our XCFramework created. We don't need this anymore. We also do not need this. And let's go to open the package where we are referencing this. So it's called binary tone package. Here, what do we have? We have the declaration of package. So it's just the tone package that we have. We just, for now, it's an empty file, because we need something to reference the dependencies, which is Lottie, and here we have it. We have that empty declaration, but we use it since here we're passing the Lottie dependency. Another thing that we have is a binary target. This is the XCFramework that we just generated. However, we do need to replace it. So here, let's remove this to trash and move it inside. Okay, now for now we could build, however we cannot use the authentication part. Again, nothing is still referencing Firebase. Our XCFramework is just referencing a protocol and optionally using it. If we cannot configure with it, then so be it, and we cannot authenticate. Now, Tom package represents our project, the XCFramework. We need something to represent what's going to provide Firebase to that project without it knowing that Firebase just knows that declaration. So for that, we're gonna add a new package to our group. So we're gonna add a new folder, and it's gonna be the Tom bridge. Why? Because it's gonna bridge Firebase and Tom package. Here we're gonna add the authentication implementation. Authentication, so we call it just authentication. And let's create that. So we have another library here. We're gonna add another one, which is our Tom bridge. And the target set is just gonna be Tom bridge. What is our Tom bridge going to use? Well, first of all, it's going to use the framework so I can reference it. Let's save here the package. Let's let it reload. Okay, the error goes away. So now that we can reference this, notice that now when I go to authentication, I can import build Tom package. So now I can have this. Fine. Do we have to make it public? No. And what will this conform? The authentication adapter. Okay, this vertical stops, and we will have these three methods that I need to conform. And here is where I will use Firebase. So what do we need to do? Go to our package. We need to include this other dependency, Firebase. And here in our Tom bridge, besides our binary, we also have our product. Okay, now that we imported the Firebase dependencies and we added them to our bridge, we can go to the authentication and we can also import that. We'll import Firebase for the configuration and we'll import FirebaseAuth for the other stuff. You can build, okay, all good. Notice that we now have another one, Tom bridge. All right, so now here we're importing, since we're importing the Tom package, we also need to provide the loaded dependency. And there's one more thing missing. Although we can already build, we do not want the final user of this package to be the one that passes this. It will mean making this public and rebuilding our implementation. So instead, let's create our own authentication. So just like we had it here, we'll have a Tom authentication with our configure, but the configure is going to be a little bit different. Instead of it being a FirebaseAuth configure, we're going to do all of this, the configure. We're going to pass our adapter to the build Tom package. So it was, I think, authentication instance. Yeah, it was the build Tom package instance that's shared, and here we're going to pass the configure. And what adapter are we going to pass? The one that we just created above. And now, what does our user have to call? Just this Tom authentication that configure. Now notice the compromise here. The source code is not available, the one that actually does stuff, but the bridge, which is using Firebase to call those methods, that one is public. Right now this is a little bit silly because I mean what is being done inside of the package is pretty much this completion, but normally your third-party libraries won't be as simple as this. you would just be calling those methods we let it do. We can do other stuff, but yeah, normally we won't have something as easy as this. We will be maybe tracking all of this with analytics, logging to our own servers and other stuff. But yeah, just for the sake of time, we're doing something simple here. And now let's go to our sample project and use this one instead of the other. So we'll add a local package, but it will not be the one that we were using before. We were just on package. Instead, it will be this, the binary one. And now notice the difference. Before we used to just have the Tom package, which was just the one carrying the Lottie dependency, and the build Tom package, which is the one carrying the XCFramework. Now we have the Tom bridge. So we add the package to the project. We'll get all of the other dependencies with Google. Of course, the user will still see that we're using Firebase. There's nothing wrong with that. And now let's go to our content view, our sample app, and here we will not be using Tom package. We need to import the bridge. Remember, that's the one that actually has the configure. And we name it the same authentication so we can still use it. And here in the content view, oh yeah, we changed the name. So here we will have the build Tom package. And what's missing right now is that the Tom authentication is not possible. Instead, we had the instance where we were implementing all of this, the shared instance, and in that one is where we're calling sign up and sign in. Okay, let's see if we're ready. Okay, we didn't have crashes. That's a good indicator. If we had missed one of the dependencies from the XCFramework here, it will have failed because remember we're calling configure on init. So let's try this. Let's sign up another user. Let's try signing up. Successfully created the user. Just first try the wrong edge case, so this one doesn't exist. Let's try signing in, and we get a successful message. Let's go to our authentication project, refresh. Ta-da! Here we have the second user we created and already signed in. We also have the date when it was last signed in. That was all for today. We saw two ways of doing this. One was with Swift packages having an open source type of code where the code is visible, we're not hiding any of the implementation. And you could see how easy it was to add the Firebase authentication dependency and just have the Swift package manager take care of the nested dependencies within it, downloading all of the Google utilities and every other stuff that we needed to use Firebase authentication. Then all that we had to do were just call the methods in FirebaseAuth to sign in and sign up the user. We also saw the other way where we can keep part of the implementation hidden in an XCFramework and still use Swift package. This requires creating a bridge where we can have part of the implementation hidden. However, the bridge where we actually use the library needs to be exposed. This is the only way that can guarantee that the XCFramework doesn't depend on the nested dependencies of Firebase authentication. And we can still leverage Swift package, so the users of our package can only import our single package and then get all of the nested dependencies with, in this case, Lottie and Firebase authentication. This may still be riskier for some, since technically the user of our package could intercept this implementation and insert their own, but it's just a limitation of Swift packages right now. There's no other way where we can include nested dependencies inside of an XCFramework and then distribute it through Swift packages. So just take that in mind. Hope you like the video. Bye.